Good morning again, everybody. Now let us return to the second presentation of our section this morning. The panelist of this section is Bishop Yang Xiaoting and Professor Dr. Claudia von Colandi. However, as you see, only Bishop Yang is on the podium, while Dr. von Colandi is on Skype. It's because Dr. von Colandi has broken her knees recently, so she is not able to come. However, with the help of Skype, she will be with us today, this morning. So before we start the discussion and presentation this morning, I want to make sure Dr. von Claudia is with us. Dr. Claudia, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, okay. Okay. So now let us start with the presentation by Professor Yang Xiaoting. And his topic will be on the positive role models and influence of the Catholic Church in the modern society of China. Dr. Yang Xiaoting is a bishop of Yunlin Diocese in China, vice chairman of the Chinese Catholic Episcopal Order, director of the Chinese Catholic Theological Research Committee, executive vice president of Chinese Catholic Theological Institute. And his research areas include dogmatic theology, religious sociology, and he has written a couple of books, including Cristo Salvatore nello Spirito Santo, Catholicism in the Land of the San Qin, a case study of Zhouzhi Diocese, and collected works of Catholicism in contemporary China. Now I pass the floor to Bishop Yang. Yeah, please.
Dear friends and colleagues, I'm so happy to be here with you all, share about Christianity in Chinese society impact, interaction, and inculturation. Thank you very much for organizations giving me this opportunity to share something in Catholic Church in China. My presentation is on the positive role, models, and influences in Catholic Church in modern society of China. Guided by numbers 38 and 42, Sollicitudo Rei Socialis on social concern of the Church, promulgated by St. John Paul II. Since the reform and opening up of China in the late 1970s, the positive role models and influences of Catholic Church in modern society of China have become more and more significant. Its embodiment is shown in Church's rapid development social service. Since its launch and become evidently integrated into Chinese culture. Moreover, it become activity in funding ways adapted to the Chinese socialist society. More reliably, it has risen and also the gaining recognition from the states and from the nation. In this environment, the Catholic Church in China can live on the basis of its own doctrine and canons, be exposed to the modern society of China, seeking its own development of localization. It engages in a great deal of work in the course of the development of religion along Chinese direction. Based on the present situation of social service of the Catholic Church in China, since opening up of China in late 1970s, This paper analyzes the social service of Catholic Church in China in the light of numbers 38 and 42 of the Encyclical Sostituto Rei Socialis by St. John Paul II in 1987, and the Compendium of Catholic Social Doctrine and the Church. It explores, discusses, and development of Catholic social service in China and the close relationship between the Catholic Church and the modern society. The presents its opportunity and challenges. The paper also makes suggestions and demonstrated the practical, significant, objective value of Catholic Church in social service. 1. Situation of service of Catholic Church in China in modern society. With the reform and the opening up of China, religious policies have been adopted and implemented fully. Thus, the Catholic Church in China has been developing its evangelization and pastoral work healthily. It is especially true when society faces the new social problem and contradictions. The Church has played a unique and positive role. The Church has made remarkable achievements in the area of social philanthropy and social service. It was well noted in an article of Professor Zhuo Furong, titled A Discussion on the Social Service of Catholic Church in China since the country's reform and opening up. She chose the term from around 1990 award. At that time, some Catholic dioceses with better sources had set up social service center, office, and charitable funds were set up. Until 1998, the joint organizations of a Catholic Patriarchal Association and the Bishop Conference of Catholic Church in China, otherwise known as 一会一团, one association and one conference, had set up a China Catholic Economic Development and Social Service Commission. In 2001, China National Religious Conference issue suggests individual encourages the religious sector to be involved in more good deeds and charitable events, and the guidance and administration of the states. Religious organizations could take charitable courses that were beautiful cases and social development. In July 2002, the Social Service Center of Xi'an Diocese was set up. Now we can see some pictures. This is the Xi'an Diocese Social Service Center. This is the Cathedral of Diocese of Xi'an. The member of the Social Service Center. The service area. The cultural education. This is for the social service center in different parishes. They put a mini library. The teaching facilities, support education and the summer vacation, also and winter vacation. They also made some funds for the scholarship for poor students. Modern church service station. the parent-child activity about Thanksgiving, to visit work home and also do work like outreach, the health, the promotion, the health outreach promotion. This, the centers go out countryside. Character surgery. Also, sustainable agriculture and environment protection. The service for Adler. To support local church for charity service. This, for example, of Xi'an Diocese Social Service Center. Like this in China, Shanghai Diocese Guangqi Service Center. Also in Hebei, Beifang Jingde Social Service Center. Liaoning Shenyang Diocese Service Center. Also, they do many works in recent times. Now, in 2004, the Yihui Yuan further set up a committee for social service of Catholic Church in China. In July 2005, the Yihui Yuan issued initiative extensive social service activity under the Chinese Social Service Committee for Social Service of Catholic Church in China. In 2010, the 8th section of Assembly Council representative in China approved or renamed organizations as Charity and Social Service Committee. On September 17, 2012, the State's Administration for Religious Affairs had a meeting in Wuhan, Hubei province, for the religious communities that agent in charity exchange appearance attended the inaugural ceremony of Religious Charity Week. On September 16 to 13, the Yihui Yuan Charities and Social Service Committee had the first meeting of 80th section in Shantou, Guangdong province. In the report of this meeting, it is said At present, a Catholic Church in all parts of the country has created 9 orphanages, 7 mental handicapped children, 52 homes for the ages, 136 clinics, 8 hospitals, 43 kindergartens, 2 cultural schools, 1 vocation school, and 173 primary school of Hope Project. Even dioceses were involved in the AIDS care service. 21 dioceses joined the service for reprocess the patients. The drought struck area have more than 40 water projects and more than 50 wells. A total of 57 dioceses donated more than 82 million yuan, equal 10.65 million euros, to help more than 20,000 needed students. 62 dioceses donations, 27.74 million yuan, equal 3.6 million euros. The disadvantaged group, over the past 5 years, the church communities throughout the country donations to 150 million yuan, equals 32.5 million euros. These good deals have witnessed the face of glory God and were prized by the society. On the morning of March 16, 2016, the 12th section of National People Congress, at its 4th meeting, voted and approved the Christ Act, which was implemented since September 1, 2016. In recent years, the Church will carry out the social service and charitable philanthropy has dedicated effort explore industry, gradually raises awareness of its communicated more refine the method and appearance. Zhuo Furong also said, since the reform and opening of China, the Catholic Church has been active in charitable works, engaging in various forms of social service, with now country and now religion spirit. Second, analysis of social service activities of Catholic Church in China. Nearly 40 years ago, the Catholic social service activities in China have been related to support of the church belief. St. John Paul II, in his encyclical Solicitudo Rei Socialis, pointed out the social concern of the church has directed towards independence, the solidarity, and practice of love. The encyclical encouraged Christians to take active part in the social affair and to serve society. When the Catholic Church of China engaged in social service activities, the people who devoted themselves to social service are those living consecrated life and lay people, and professional and volunteers. Its service are the financial by church funds, donations from the faithful, cooperation among the social institutions, and donations from overseas charities or foundations. The Catholic Church has brought together the human financial resources, adopted good methods and appearances. The Catholic Church has made gratifying achievements in social service, which has its own characteristics and its social influence, which the far teachings. Since the founding of the New China in 1949, especially since the reform and opening up in late 1970s, our religion people and the believers in our country hold high the balance of our country and our religion. This is so-called the Catholic Church in China. Contemporary social service has a broad development, the products, and has its characteristics and influences. The role and characteristics of Catholic service in modern Chinese society. From the description and analysis of Catholic social service in the modern Chinese society, it can be found that the church has its own advantage and characteristic in many aspects and social care. It can be said, 1. The church has indeed played a role adapting to the so-called core of the social terms, and activity engaged the resolving social conflicts and showing social pressure among the ranks. The second, the church with love care, dedication, and love practice can help the disadvantaged and valuable groups to be cared for and happy. Thirdly, the church is the gospel of life, the gospel of people, the gospel of charity, and the concept of gospel of service serving different sectors of society, different regions, and different identities of people, the different sectors in society with welcome and positive affirmation of the church. The church is guided by the encyclical Solicitudo Rei Socialis in the context of compendium of social doctrine of the church and the Gaudium et Spes. The church has a practical agenda encouraging the faithful of practice in the light of their own faith, historical tradition, and high social credibility. The faithful, the church is able to carry out service and charitable activities in accordance with the spirit of the one, opinions of encouragement, and the regulation of religious communities to engage in public character activities jointly issued by China National Sixth Ministerial Committee, and whereas the new promulgated the charter law requirements. Sixth, in the new area, the Catholic Church in China not only encourages and regulates its own charitable activities, but also carry out the social service activity according to the law, which is actively support and earnestly implementing the basic policy of national religious work. The church, the social doctrine is not an idea, but rather an enlightenment of faith and the traditions of the church, a careful reflection of the complex facts of human existence in the social and international order. The eighth, the Catholic service in the modern Chinese society is one of the ways for the church to develop along the Chinese direction. The church can maintain the basic doctrine of faith and also integrate it into China for traditional culture. Opportunity for Catholic Church to serve in modern Chinese society. The reform and opening up have provided the broad prospects for the development of Chinese Catholic social service. 1. Support and encouragement from national policies. The second, the Bible and concrete testimony of sacred tradition. The thirdly, church's good tradition alive. Fourthly, the need and call for the social morality. Problem and challenge faced by the Catholic social service in China. During the past 40 years of reform and opening up, the Catholic Church has made gratefully achievements in the social service and the social philanthropy in modern Chinese society. But there were still many new problems and challenges. The first, Catholic social service institution numbers but in need of improvement. The second, lack of interaction between Catholic social service organizations. Thirdly, lack of Catholic social service professionals. Fourthly, the lack of fund for Catholic social service. The Catholic social service need desensitization. Also, the church service and charitable philanthropy are under the protection of the law and the support of policies. The church is engaged with the service in location and personnel associated with the church. Many times because of and registered and religious reason, the social service are operated in the shade of illegal operation or suspicious of missionary activities. Suggestion on the service of Chinese Catholic in modern society. To fully understand the Church's mission and responsibility to carry out social service and philanthropy, one has to face its complexity and difficult series. The Church should strive to 1. Strengthen the cooperation between the Church and the society. The Church has to establish the communication and operation means among the Catholic social service organizations. Secondly, to place importance and create good atmosphere for the whole churches to commit in good deeds and can have various forms of service. Thirdly, to further improve local church charitable work mechanisms. Fourth, strengthen the skill training of the personnel of the church, public character, cultivate and create group of the church professional, engaged in public character, strengthen the cooperation and horizontal contact, promote the specialization and institutionalization of the charitable organizations in different parts of the country. The strength of exchange experiences, the learning from each other, discuss with each other, encourage each other, continuously improve the level of service, set up the Chinese church to carry out social service and public charity. Theoretically, research term to carry out practical activities, and to provide theoretical basic and long-term planning and guidance. Sixth, the pay attention to integrity and effectiveness of the service, do more timely service and less acting as a kick. The significance of the value Catholic service in modern society. On the survey of Catholic society in China, it can be found that when confronted with social problems and needs, the church always actively commits itself and adapted to the common development. The reason can be drawn from the church's Solicitudo Rei Socialis. This encyclical directly addresses the real development of human and society. It respects and promoted all aspects of development. The church has often expressed her concern for social affairs in view of global dimensions of today's social problems. The church follows special care for the poor and stand with the poor. The church's social teaching inspired us to serve hungry people, the poor, the homeless, and those who are unable to acquire medical care, especially those who are desperate for the future. It is impossible not to consider the existence of this factor. Ignoring this fact is like becoming the rich man who pretends not to know that the beggar Lazarus lay outside his own door. Furthermore, the Gaudium et Spes also says, the joy and hopes, the grief and anxieties of the men of the ages, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted, these are the joys and hopes, the grief and anxieties of the followers of Christ. The second, the social service issue is viewed from the connections of compendium of the social doctrine of the church. The compendium, in a completed and systematic manner, articulated the basic theory of Catholic social teaching. It not only touches on the meaning of humanism, but also discusses the practice of the church's love in society. The culture of love depicts a world of the love described in the church doctrine, and it integrated into a society of love. The connotations of this kind of love embodies the service of the church in modern society and has its inevitability, adaptability, and relevance to the society, which makes the relationship between church and the society closer and more unique. The elevation of the Catholic service of modern society. Since the church social service not only embodies the social role of the church in carrying for the modern world, but also show a kind of phenomenon accompanying the social development. Now we examine the relationship between the modern society and the social service of the church, and find out the significance of modern society to the church future. People tend to worry about a rendering of the social service of the church because the role of the church might be watered down and overshadowed by the modern social functions. Then, it might cause an imbalance to the scope of the church and its server. The church is, in fact, in the social strata and a part of development model. It is also faces with problems in modern society and the universe nature. Such problems may include contradictions and difficulties in adaptations to society. The church, adapting to modern society and living in contemporary time, can be a carrier of human, spiritual, and cultural value. The church can be a big social network. It can perform its functions as a unity in church, in which it plays its collective interaction with a common spiritual interest. But in fact, within the Christian communities at the level of social service, they are not closely linked. Almost all are the impermanent in providing service at the spiritual level and to meet the aspiration of social and spiritual value. Then, it might appear that the network of tangible social functions of the church communities communities may find when social and secure bodies become strong and more feasible to meet the needs of human material design. They will become important factor of social link outside of church. Therefore, there is inevitable need the subsidiary among the social service of the church groups. Therefore, when the connections within church groups and its social functions become unbalanced, the social service of the church and demand for modern social functions are necessary to surface each other. Adaptability of Catholic service in modern society. If we regard the social service of the church as a social phenomenon, we must focus on the social aspect of the church, on the essence of the church. The church was first founded to make effect to establish a sacrificial relationship between the faithful and the God they worship. In modern society, the interpretation of the social service of the church in the Chinese context has entered into the value system of Chinese culture, as if the Christian gospel culture was introduced from the Jewish culture into the Greek culture, the Latin culture, and the Chinese culture. People in the interpretation and pursuit of value are transformed from the traditional culture into the modern culture, and combined with the fine traditional culture of the upright truth. Therefore, when the church serves in the modern Chinese society, her presence will become evident product of pluralistic modern international society. After the social service of the church entered into the modern society, the nation and the states have become the basic object of church search for identity. A state's power becomes more and more perfect when its political system, economic system, legal system, cultural and education system, and other sectors are on the rise. This enables the church to constantly search and respond to the demand of social development to care for the society. Also, it is a necessary reason for advancing with the times, integrating into the society, saving the society, and developing the charity and philanthropy. The church adapted to the modern society and embodies its role in the institutional and hierarchical structure of society. This will be in pursuit of modern society to shine the own unique spiritual elements of love. The relevance of Catholic service in modern society. The present time, the human society is far from being an ideal, just as reasonable the practices on the earth. As long as there were birth and death, disappointment, the troubles, mishaps, fear, and other natural and human causes disaster. Helpless human beings will be founded. The need for human beings to look for conforms in emotions from the church. That is, in practice of the value of life and immediate concern of the goal. Since the roots of the truth, good beauty and sanctification are emphasized in the church communities, these help embody human emotions and moral behavior, allowing people to have wide adaptability, dependability on others, This is fundamental condition for the church carry out a social service. For a long time, for pure faith, the belief often stems from the desire for an inner emotion and sensory experience, even in the so-called science omnipotente. Today, there are still people who have emotional needs, restless on the social life, impulse and concept life of correct a position, desire in the heart that not for a scientific language to express language. This is beyond the reality of the fight in the social life. When the limitation of science language and the social life especially vivid, it needs a kind transcendentally power of explain the doubles and pulses in human life. It provides an important reason for the necessity and existence of theological language and the church serving society. It lies the foundation for the church to serve society, to keep a close relationship between church and society. In short, the Catholic service for the society is necessary. Church and social life have the activity. Church and society are independent. Unity keeping a loving and intimate relationship with each other. The role and influences of Catholic Church in China in modern social service cannot be ignored. The significance and causes of Catholic Church service in modern Chinese society should be viewed directly and understood deeply. The support of Catholic social service work is necessary to enable the Church to play a more vitally essential role. The Catholic Church social service, despite some difficult problems and challenges, is carried out with the continual development of the Church itself. Coupled with the improving social environment and new opportunities, the country's social service will make great achievement to promote social harmony, resolve social contradictions, reduce social pressures, and make more contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Yang, for his comprehensive and also reflective report on the Catholic Church in China, how she adapts herself to the contemporary society through the social service in the light of the recent Catholic teaching documents. Now I would like to pass the floor to Professor Claudia von Colani. Professor Colani is a missiologist and a specialist of East Asian mission history of the early modern times, with the emphasis on Chinese rights controversy, figurism, exchange of knowledge between China and Europe. She is the author of 8 books and more than 130 articles and as many books reviews. She is a collaborator at several research projects, such as Mission and Theater, the first Western translation of Dao De Jing on the Yi Jing, a book project about Johannes Schreck, known as Terentius. She is also author of more than 200 bibliographies of the Internet Encyclopedia of Stochasticon, co-editor with Paul Ru on the book The Actor Picanesia. It is a book part of a series, Monumenta Historica. So Let us welcome Professor Claudia von Colandi.
Good morning,
Good morning.
dear auditorium, and dear ladies and gentlemen. Can you understand me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I regret very much that I was not able to join you, but I will try to give my response from my desk at home. In his fine and well-elaborate paper, Bishop Yang Xiaoting described the different ways of contribution and done by the Catholic Church in China for the solution of social problems of China. As a tool, Bishop Yang used the encyclical Sollicitudine Socialis on the social concern of the Church by Pope John Paul II, published in 1987, and Compendium of the Catholic Social Doctrine of the Church, published in 2004. This gives Bishop Yang the frame to elaborate his thesis of the important role of Catholic social contributions to China. I am not an expert in social questions of the Catholic Church, but I'm a missiologist who is mostly working on Chinese mission history. Therefore, let me try to give an answer to Bishop Yang's paper from my special field of research of the Chinese church history of early modern times. The main question of Bishop Yang's paper is, what needs the Chinese society today, and what can the Catholic Church contribute? And he mentioned many activities. My answer is a historical one. What did Chinese people need during the early time from the end of the 16th century? How did Christian Europe answer these needs? And my tools will be adaptation to the special features of the Chinese culture of late Ming and early Qing dynasty. Let me start with the situation of the Ming dynasty. In his paper, Bishop Yang mentions the words fine traditional culture. To elaborate this topic a bit, the Chinese cultural imperative, as a late Bishop Eric Zuricher of Leiden University called it, was dominant in the whole Far East, in Korea, Japan, and in many other countries. It included religions, philosophy, scripture, ways of behavior, manners, and so on. China had three religions, so to say, namely Confucianism, which can also be considered as a state philosophy, Taoism, and Buddhism. There was no problem to adhere to the three of them and to be orthodox in the eyes of the Chinese Empire. At the end of the Ming Dynasty, the situation was a bit complicated because China had closed, more or less, totally from the rest of the world. This was partly due to the new Ming Dynasty after the Yuan Dynasty, and partly the failure of the Wanli Emperor, who ruled a long time over China and neglected his duties. And therefore the Chinese Empire declined because of the corruption, injustice at the court, eunuchs, and so on. China forgot many of his knowledge of science and techniques which were necessary. And now we are coming to the Europeans. The first contact with the Chinese Empire was not always happy, that especially Portuguese and Spanish traders wanted to have commerce with China. Missionary orders wanted to preach the gospel in vain, and both sides had strong prejudice against each other. So how to overcome this prejudice? When the first Jesuits tried to enter China, they faced the problem that the Chinese people felt no need for a new religion. Why do we need Christianity? We have our own high and old culture, we have our religions. What is Christianity good for? So the Jesuit visitor Alessandro Valignano, who had made experiences in Japan, tried to overcome the problem by developing the method of adaptation or accommodation. The two Jesuits, Michele Ruggieri and Matteo Ricci, who felt a great sympathy with China, were the first one to use this method. They and their successors further developed this so-called method of accommodation. They wanted to show that the Chinese Western culture was also on a high level, and that Europe could not only offer a monotheistic religion, but also other cultural achievements and science. And this method consisted of the following features: learning of the language, mission from top down, starting with the emperor of the Chinese scholars, indirect mission by modern European science, technology and arts, adaptation to the local culture, apostolate of the book. And by using this method, which was quite uncommon in all modern times, especially the Jesuits paved the way for the propagation of the gospel. They started with the learning of the language, which was done in Macau. The first ones were Ruggieri and Ricci, and they studied the Chinese for books. And now we are coming to the mission from top down, starting from the emperor and the Chinese scholars. The Wang Li emperor lived far away from his people, and therefore the Jesuits started to get contact with him. Matteo Ricci had indirect contact to the court by sending European curiosities to the emperor. Amongst them were European globes and maps, giving an impression of the European culture. By means of these gifts, which were considered as a kind of tribute from Europe, permission to stay in Beijing in 1601, he was buried there, and his Jesuit brethren were permitted to stay and to care for his grave. And more important than the contact to the invisible emperor was the contact to the Chinese scholars. Ricci was a very charming personality, and he soon had friends among the Chinese scholars. Both of them, Chinese scholars and Jesuits, had much in common. They had a comparable family background, they were fond of learning and education, whereas wealth was not really important. And this was a common base for a kind of dialogue between both of them. The Jesuits became scholars of the West, and as such they had admittance to the networks of the scholars. These scholars felt attracted by European knowledge and science, which they wanted to use for the renovation of Chinese science, but also for the renovation of statecraft in China. And there are especially four pillars of Christianity called Xu Guangqi, Li Qichao, Yang Tingyun, and Philip Wang Cheng. And all of them became close friends of the Jesuits and helped them in every respect. And these scholars, of course, also embraced Christianity. How did they do it? They were all Confucian scholars, but they needed something spiritual. And they didn't find it in other religions, and finally they found it in Christianity. By means of dialogues, they got to know about Christianity, and finally they converted. Some of these scholars, however, did never convert, but remained friends of the Jesuits. And we have evidence of these dialogues at that time by Matteo Ricci's Tianqiu Shi and by the minutes kept by Christian in Fujian about their conversations with Giulio Aleni. And we may also ask why the Jesuits preferred the contact with the upper class, whereas other orders worked especially among the lower classes. The scholars were the leading class, and the Jesuits were convinced that the lower classes would follow the model of the upper classes, and when China would have become Christian, then the rest of the Far East would follow. And in this way, China was opened for Christianity and for the gospel. Now the next topic, indirect mission by European science and technology. For the first 50 years, the Jesuits were the only missionaries in China, so that they could try and improve their method by experience. China had been closed with the beginning of Ming Dynasty and lost many of his knowledge concerning science and technology. Therefore, the most important thing the Jesuits brought to China was modern European science, including mathematics, astronomy, and cartography. Especially the introduction of modern European astronomy and the reform of the Chinese calendar became important. When Ricci arrived in China, the Catholic Church had a new calendar. There had been the calendar reform by Pope Gregory. And now the Jesuits wanted to use this knowledge to help the Chinese to have a new calendar reform. Especially Xu Guangqi, the friend of the Jesuits, wanted to give them a firm standing in China, and he planned to have a team of Chinese and Western experts who should perform the calendar reform. However, the first petitions to the throne were refused and only approved by the Chongqian Emperor. And therefore, the Jesuits sent a group of astronomical educated Jesuits to China. Among them were Johannes Schreck, Karl Terentius, and Johann Charles von Bell from Cologne. And under the reign of the Chongqian Emperor, there was a team of Chinese and Western scholars who performed the calendar reform. This new calendar, however, was not approved during the Ming Dynasty, so people were afraid to take it, and only after the change to the Manchu or Qing Dynasty, it was accepted. And Charles von Bell was a responsible leader of the reform. So the new calendar became valid only in 1644, when the Manchus had conquered China. More important, or even as much important, was the field of mechanics and machines, where we have a strong collaboration between Jesuits and Chinese scholars. Despite the fact that such practical things were not in high esteem in Confucian circles. We have several books written together with Chinese and European scholars, translation of European books, and development of a new terminology. Men like Xu Guangqi tried to save the Chinese state by new statecraft by using European ideas. The most important of them was Xu Guangqi, who also improved agriculture for the Chinese people. And these Chinese and Western teams made much improvement to the culture. Then adaptation to the local Chinese culture. An important thing was that Jesuits strongly adapted to the way of life in China, and that they became Chinese with the Chinese. And I want to mention here only one point, namely the terminology and the rights controversy. The discussion about it started soon after his death, about the name for God, for angels and spiritual beings, and concerning the Chinese rights for the ancestors and Confucius. In China, people who refused to attend the rites were considered as suspicious and perhaps members of a heterodox group, because these rites constituted the Confucian state. Concerning the question of the name of God, there was a question, should one use terms as Tian, heaven, Shangdi, Lord of heaven, or Tianshu, or should one take a Latin word? And this was discussed for a long time within the Jesuit order. Finally, the Jesuits decided that one should use Chinese names for God. And when in 1692 the Kangxi Emperor issued the Edict of Toleration, it seemed that Christianity had got its firm place within the Chinese society, not with many members, but well established and evidently able to grow. Apostolate of the book. China was and is a culture where learning played an important role, and the whole bureaucratic system was built upon examinations where everybody had the chance to get access to the highest offices. And therefore books played an important role. It was a class of scholars who was the most esteemed one. And so Matteo Ricci brought nice books from Europe which were submitted to the Wanli Emperor. Whereas in other countries, the missionaries only wrote catechisms or vocabularies or even invented scriptures based on Western letters, China was in this respect something quite different. The books written by missionaries together with Chinese scholars constituted a really vast field. They wrote books on religion and theology, on science, and more worldly subjects, on mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, or even falconry. We know 120 books about European science, 470 books with religious theological texts, amongst them 130 manuscripts. There were books about the life of Jesus, biographies of saints, and so on. And these books were not written only by the Jesuits alone, but together with Chinese scholars, because the elegance of the language was a very important field. And these books reached also people which did not come into direct contact with Europeans, but lived in closed countries as Japan and Korea. And this science was spread all over East Asia. Now I will mention in short some social contributions of the missionaries at the end of the 17th to the end of the 18th centuries. The Society of Jesus was especially famous for its accommodation and for the publication of books. Other orders had other special fields, and among them were social contributions. The first hospitals in the Far East were built on the Philippines by Franciscans, and they continued their work in Macau. The most important hospital run by the Franciscans was in Guangdong, in Canton, in Yanglinli. And this was only built up with the help of Chinese nobility and scholars. And in this field, the Franciscans adapted to the Jesuit accommodation. They kept contact to Chinese princes and mandarins, and so they got the permission to build the hospital. This hospital was for free for missionaries and for Chinese people, and that's a great difference to today's hospitals, which are very expensive for people who visit them. And also in the field of pharmacy, the Franciscans were very important, and they made experiments with Chinese and Eastern medicine. Another field was a work with abandoned children. At that time, the selling of children as slaves, the exposure of babies, and infanticide were ways of birth control, which was very terrible. And in Europe, we had orphanages, and also the children were abandoned. For the missionaries, this way was, of course, terrible. These children were thought to needed a baptism to get to the better life. And Henri Matteo Ricci started to support 30 orphanages for exposed children who were collected from the streets. Sometimes the missionaries or catechists wandered through the streets to baptize at least the dying children and to save the living ones. And in this context, we should mention the Christian lady Candida Xu, the granddaughter of Xu Guangqi, who worked together with the vice king of Sichuan and bought a big house for his children, and also the mandarins contributed, and the children were baptized. And in letters to Europe, the missionaries asked for help for catechists to sustain these children and to baptize them. However, the missionaries took traditional Chinese names for Christian God, so that Christianity would not appear as a foreign religion in China. But already in 1693, a mandate was issued forbidding the participation of Christians at the veneration of Confucius and the ancestors, because it was considered as superstition. And the mandate was brought to Rome and became valid for the whole of China. Already in 1705, a legate was sent to China, Charles Thomas Maillard de Tournon, and he was received very well by the Kangxi Emperor, but he was convinced that Confucianism and Christianity was not compatible, and so he was expelled. And all attempts by the Kangxi Emperor to save the church were in vain. And the church survived, but the rites were forbidden, and only Chengqiu was permitted to be used. And so the Christianity became a church which was no longer the church which was accepted by everybody. Now to come to my conclusion. The problems of Christianity in China during the past and during the present are not the same. In early modern times, missionaries had to open a door to China for the new foreign religion. At first, they used European culture to gain the interest of Chinese. Then they presented the Christian faith to the Chinese people as something that was not only urgently needed, which was not a foreign religion, but the complement of the Confucianism of old times. Therefore, Christianity and Confucianism, both of them were compatible, and one could be a Confucianist and a Christian at the same time. Since then, the problem of the foreign religion is solved. Nobody there exists. Nowadays, we have a proud Chinese church, which, however, has to solve other problems. The church tries to help those who are marginalized, who need attention and care. The acceptance of Christianity in China in early modern times was especially the merit of the Jesuits with their policy and adaptation. During and after the quarrel about the rights, the Jesuits were reproached that the faith they preached was not Christian enough, not pure enough, that it was too much adapted to paganism, and that a Peking emperor had not the right to say anything about theological questions, as Kangxi Emperor did. Nowadays, the Catholic Church as such is reproached that she does not only deal with spiritual and religious things, but also with social questions. Pope John Paul II, however, cannot be considered as being too worldly or not spiritual enough. And religion, in our case Christianity, is nothing abstract, because a truly incarnated religion as Christianity not only includes the soul, but also the body. And this can be shown in China and everywhere else. And the dialogue can help us to promote this vision of a modern Catholic Church. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for Professor Claudia's response. By analyzing the adaptation of the Catholic missionaries from the 16th century to the 18th century, the missionaries adapting themselves by introducing modern European sciences, technology, and arts, which is quite different from that of the contemporary Catholic Church in China as presented by Bishop Yang. I think apart from the similarities between the two methods or two approaches, do we notice also there are some similarities among them? So I would like to open the floor to the public for questions or comments or discussions. Yes. Yes.
Joseph Loftus, Vincentian Irish College. I'd just like to take up Bishop Yang's expression, icing on the cake, in his observation about the challenges facing the Catholic Church's social service initiatives. I wonder, does that reality, I think he's very correct in making that point, come from the fact that in many instances, the social service idea is still operating as an aid to evangelization and is driven by an evangelization imperative rather than an imperative which springs from the Christian concept of service. And would you like to comment on that? And secondly, in order to arrive at a social service that actually meets the needs of contemporary Chinese people, there is a great deal a need for analysis, because I find sometimes that the social service responses of the church are somewhat naive. Again, the icing on the cake question comes in. And is it possible, given the huge changes that are taking place in Chinese society at the moment, is it actually possible to arrive at an analysis that will allow the church to find its niche rather than in the provision of social services, rather than, as it sometimes attempts to do, duplicate services that are being actually increasingly well provided by the state.
My English is very poor, so I want to speak Chinese Mandarin. The professor, he gives an interpreter. Thank you very much for your questions. 刚才提及到这个社会服务工作，其实在起初，教会可能在某种程度上，也可以说是很大程度上，是有这个传教的目的。但现在不一定做社会工作就是一种只抱着传教来做社会工作。
At the beginning, we do, to a certain extent, we do have this evangelization motive behind our social service. But right now, it is not the case, as we, the evangelization motive is not the only concern of the social services.
比如在好多年前，教会开始做这个社会服务工作的时候，我们都是以教区为主体来做。
Many years ago, when we conduct social services, it was based on the diocese at the diocesan level.
但现在做社会服务工作不一定是以教区的名义，比方我们现在按照这个慈善法做一些社会服务机构，我们按照民政机构要求注册，按照民政部的要求，以及民政单位的要求，按照慈善法，就是这个社会服务中心跟教区现在分离，我们开始做工作。
For example, now as we conduct the social services because of the Charity Act of the state, all the social service organizations has to be registered with the Ministry of Ministry of Civil Affairs. So therefore, some of our social centers are registered independently with the social Ministry of Social Civil Service, and it may not be necessarily part of the diocesan organization.
比方像河北北方进德。北方进德它不隶属于任何教区，它是在社会部门它是注册的。还有像陕北，我也是去年刚注册，靖边天爱社会服务中心，它与教区没有关系，是在民政局注册的，按照这个社团登记，按照慈善法，我们开展工作。
For example, the two examples is that for example, the one in Shijiazhuang in Hebei, the Jingde, has been registered as a social organization with the government, and it has nothing, organizationally speaking, to do with the church as part of the church organization. And also, Bishop Yang had also registered another organization according to the law prescribed by the Charity Act with the Civil Affairs and as an independent NGO that provides social services.
Yes, the lady over there.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. So I work for Centro Astalli, that maybe somebody of you knows. We are working for refugees and asylum seekers. Very close to this place. Very close to this place. We are in Via del Collegio Romano in Piazza Venezia and Via degli Astalli. Okay, I appreciate very much both the two reports, focusing on the social service of the Catholic Church in China. As you know, as you can imagine, Centro Astalli can just appreciate such a work, because we also do the same among refugees here in Rome. Anyway, I also working for asylum seekers, and in the last years, the last 2 or 3 years, our Chinese asylum seekers are coming, claiming persecutions by the Chinese government. Most of them are Protestant, belonging to domestic churches. So I would like to know what is the situation of Catholic Christians in China, if some of them also belong to domestic churches, so they are a little bit out of this system. And what is their condition in China, if they are really persecuted or they are accepted. Okay, thank you.
首先回答这个难民问题。当然，在中国，其实我们在国内所看到的，难民，向外面要走的时候，或者是到了国外成为难民，那到国内，我们没有感觉到是难民。但是为啥出了国以后到国外就成难民？
I'd like to first respond to the question of the refugees. Yes, we have heard about the refugees, but when they were in China, they were just ordinary people. Why would they become refugees when they are outside of China?
我可以以我个人来讲，我93年来到意大利学习的时候，好多人问我。 你是地下的，还是公开的？
And when, for example, in my case, I came to study in Italy in 1993. When I arrived here, people asked me, "Do you belong to the underground church or the open church?"
你是神父还不是神父啊？
Are you a real priest or not a real priest?
神父还能从中国出来吗？
If a priest, how can you? If you're a real priest, how can you come out of China?
他们认为神父能出来的话，那可能就不是神父，因为政治问题，神父就不可能出国。
They thought that if you're a priest, you cannot come out of China because of the Chinese registration systems.
后来半年以后，这个问题已经不是问题，所以问我你是什么教会？我说我是博多禄教会。
When after 6 months, that no longer an issue of my status, then they asked me, which church do you belong to? I belong to the church from St. Peter's.
在美国，我也听到同样的问题，借着政治庇护，他不想回国，想在美国找工作，想在美国拿到绿卡。
And I also, when I was in the States, encountered many of those cases because of the personal certain reasons. They want to stay in the States, get a green card, permanent residence, and they will seek the status of political asylums.
如果那个时候我在美国，要说我是受迫害的，可能我也在美国就留下了。但是，我感觉到我还应该回我的祖国，为祖国教会服务，为祖国服务。
If I would like to stay in the States at the time, I could easily seek the status of I would apply for political asylum because I can claim of being persecuted politically, and I could have stayed in the States. But I love my country, I love my church. I would like to go back to China and serve my church and my country.
实际上，有时候在外面听的跟实际上差距很大。
What you have heard, what we heard in the outside of China and versus the situation in China are often very two different matters.
只有经历过的人最清楚是怎么回事。
For those who have experienced that, we know what's going on.
Renno Gregorian University. Just one question about the heresy problem in China and what attitude the Catholic Church is going to deal with the problem of heresy. And they use the title of Christianism, but they actually follow another kind of theology thoughts, like the God of the Almighty or something other sect, like the 东方闪电. What attitude and how can the Catholic Church deal with that? 就是关于中国邪教的一个问题，因为我原来也听说过，他们有很多他们打的是基督教的名号，但是他们相对最著名的一个是原来招远的那个全能神的一个事件。我不知道在这种事情中，因为这个邪教事件在中国相当于是一个很有中国特色的一个事件。我不知道在这个事件中，天主教会能够扮演一个什么样的角色？ Professor, sorry, I'm Bishop.
OK。其实这个问题有关邪教，或者是这几年在国内出现有闪电教这个门徒会还有这个全能神教。当然了，社会上出现有这种现象，但是这种现象从天主教的角度来讲，我们认为它是与我们的教义在很大程度上，甚至跟我们教会的教义是不相容的。那我们能做什么？那其实，在我们的福传牧灵工作中，常在堂区，在这个培训班，甚至在这个堂里讲道的时候，我们也常强调，让教友们要常常明白什么是真正的这个基督宗教，什么不是这个借着基督宗教的名义来做这个邪教组织。我们在堂里常常给教友们宣讲，而且在这个培训当中，有时候我们也做一些专题讲座。
The social phenomena of appearance of those evil cults or the heresies, such as the disciples groups or the Church of Almighty, is a social phenomenon that exists in China. Their teachings are incompatible and also different from our doctrines. And we have been educating of our faithfuls in the different levels in the parish and the teachings and other formation programs to emphasize that what is the true teaching of our Christian faith and what is not, so that it will make them aware of this kind of evil cults, which may be in the names of Christianity, but actually, in fact, they are not. So basically, we did these kind of programs in evangelizations and the parish levels in different types of trainings to equip and to enable our parishioners to make such distinctions.
还有在这个今年在这个省人代会期间，我的这个发言就是要从这个宗教的正面引导跟这个邪教方面的区分，要在社会上要有这样的一个广泛宣传。
Also, this year, some of my planter speeches were basically on the positive guidance from the church, so that we note what are the distinctions between the evil cult and our true religion.
This is the last question.
Thank you very much, Bishop and Professor, for very insightful presentations. My name is Bao Nguyen. I am a student here at the Gregorian from Vietnam. And my question is for both Bishop and the Professor. Almost immediately after the Vietnam War, when the communists took over Vietnam, a number of dioceses in Vietnam, a number of Vietnamese bishops, they had to decide to close down their own seminaries because the communist regime forced in its curriculum onto the seminary. So the bishop, unfortunately and sadly, preferred to close it down rather than enforcing the regime's curriculum. So my question is, are there currently Catholic institutions in China at the university level, including a pontifical level? And as for the seminary, are seminaries currently open in China? Are they in some way also being coerced to execute a curriculum put out by the government?
May I invite Professor Claudia to respond first?
Thank you very much. I'm not a real expert about the situation today, but as far as I know, there's a high quality of seminaries and education in theological things. However, it is always good if somebody goes abroad and has new experience there and sees the world and the religion from another point of view. And that's not only true for theology, but for all fields of education. But as far as I know, China is a very good level. But the bishop is much better in this respect.
关于这个神学院，也是我们叫修道院，好像修道院的地方就是我们学神学，我们从灵修方面陶成的一个地方。实际上，从这个今天我的这个论文题目是从这个圣让保罗士他的这个社会教义，从这个方面来看教会与社会的关系。那么这个问题，我想教宗他不只是作为一个文件，而是要让全球的教会，甚至在修院培育过程当中，都应该去纳入学习的一个主要内容。
You were talking about sometimes we call it a theological college, but in our context we call it seminaries, a place where we learn information in Christian faith. And today's the topic I chose was basically inspired, taken from the teaching by the St. John Paul II, and his concern on social services of the church. And it is not only that I share with you, but also it is it has been informed and also educated part of a formation program in our schools, in our seminaries.
在修院教育过程中，我们现在已经清楚地明白到，神学不能够离开社会学。
We know that theology in the formation of in our seminary cannot be departed from sociology.
就像我们一个完整的人，我们具有灵魂和肉身。
Just like in our person, in the holistic person, we have soul and we also have our body.
在修院教育过程中，现在 我们没有感觉到说政府来强迫我们学习什么，而是我们在学习过程当中，我们有一种渴望，比如对社会的了解，对国家政策的了解，对这个怎么样来从这个国家政策来维护教会的权益，来开展教会的各项工作。如果不学习、不了解，我们可能连自己的生存空间，我们都不知道怎么样来寻找。
In our experience of the seminary educations, we have not felt that there has been coercion by the government to impose certain curriculums on us. But on the contrary, we felt that during our education, we need to know more about the society, much more about the policy of the government, so that we will know those policies and from which we know how to defend our rights and to try to create more space for the church to develop. If we do not know about those policies or our rights, how can we help the church to sustain and also expand in our society?
比如像现在中国目前习近平总书记在强调这个精准扶贫、脱贫，那这个理念跟我们在做社会服务工作当中，它是没有任何冲突的。
For example, our President Xi Jinping had been promoting a very clear plans of the poverty alleviations and especially precise poverty alleviations to help the poor. It has totally no contradiction at all with our teaching and also with our practice.
还有习近平讲到一个人类命运共同体这个概念，那如何我们从普世教会的概念，从这个神学的概念，如何来理解人类命运共同体这样的一个主题思想。
For example, our president also promotes a concept of that the humanities we are common in our destinies. This kind of entities that is quite similar to our concept of that united of all the human kind together, almost like the similarity to universal humanities for the welfare of all.
所以很多问题已经是我们需要学习。我们渴望学习。
There's a lot of these kind of social issues that we need to learn, and we also wanted to learn.
Thank you, all the discussions and comments and observations this morning. And I think we have enough up to now. So I would like to thank once again our panelists, Bishop Yang, and especially our gratitude to Professor Claudia, even though she cannot be with us, she is available with us on Skype. So thank you all for your presence.